Lesson 1.11, combine place values to subtract. Estimate, then find the difference. Number one, we have 476 minus 269. Now we can round this to the nearest 10 or to the nearest 100. So let's round it to the nearest 100. So 476 rounded to the nearest 100, it would be between 400 and 500. But 476 is closer to 500. 269 is between 200 and 300, but it is closer to 300. Now, when we subtract, 0 minus 0 equals 0, 0 minus 0 equals 0, 5 minus 3 equals 2. So our estimate is 200. Now, we can combine the place values to subtract. So we have 476 minus 269. Now, we see right here, if we combine the tens and the ones, it'll be 76 minus 69. Now, 76 minus 69, we know that will equal 7. So 7. Now, we can subtract the hundreds place. 4 minus 2 equals 2. So our answer is close to the estimate, so our answer is correct. Now, number 2, we're going to estimate first. Let's round to the nearest 100. 615 is between 600 and 700, but it is closer to 600. 342 is between 300 and 400, but it is closer to 300. So 0 minus 0, we start from the ones place. We start subtracting from the ones place. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 again is 0. 6 minus 3 is 3. So our estimate is 300. Now let's solve the problem to see if our estimate is close to the answer. So we have 5 minus 2. Now we know 5 minus 2 is 3. And we can easily combine these two. 61 minus 34. So we have to borrow from the hundreds place because we cannot subtract 1 from 4. We cross this out, it becomes a 5. And this 1 becomes an 11. Now we can subtract 11 minus 4. 11 minus 4 is 7. Now let's go to the hundreds place. It's no longer 6 minus 3. It is 5 minus 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. So we have 273 as the exact answer, and our estimate was 300. Number 3, we have 500 minus 113. If we round to the nearest 100, we know that 508 is between 500 and 600, but it is closer to 500. And 113 is between 100 and 200, but it is closer to 100. So our estimate, we start from the ones place. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 in the tens place is 0. 5 minus 1 from the hundreds place equals 4. So our estimate is 400. So now let's solve the problem to find the exact answer. 8 minus 3, that is 5. And over here we have 50 minus 11. Now when we do the math, we know that 50 minus 11 will be 39. So let's combine these two place values. So again, 0 minus 1, we can't do 0 minus 1, but we can borrow 1 from the 5. It becomes a 4. Now this 0 can become a 10, and 10 minus 1 is 9. And on the hundreds place, it's no longer 5 minus 1. It is 4 minus 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. So our estimate was 400, and our exact answer was 395. Number 4. First, we estimate. We have 716. If we round 716 to the nearest 100, it'll be between 700 and 800, but it is closer to 700. And 229 would be between 200 and 300, and it would be closer to 200. Closer to 200. So we subtract from the ones place first, 0 minus 0, 0, 0 minus 0, 0, 7 minus 2 is 5. So our estimate is 500. So we know when we solve it, our answer shouldn't be far from 500. So now we have 6 minus 9. We can't do 6 minus 9, so we would have to borrow from the neighbor. We borrow 1 from the neighbor. It then becomes 0, and this 6 becomes a 16. Now 16 minus 9 is 7. Now we subtract the 1, the tens place. It's no longer a 1 minus 2, it's a 0 minus 2. And we can't do 0 minus 2, so the 0 has to borrow from the 7. The 7 becomes a 6, and this 0 becomes a 10. Now 10 minus 2 equals 8. Now we subtract the hundreds place. It's no longer 7 minus 2, it is 6 minus 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. So our answer is 487, and our estimate was 500. Number 5. First we estimate, then we solve it. So we have 826. Since we round the first 4 to the nearest 100, let's round 5 through 8 to the nearest tens. So 826 is between, when we're rounding to nearest tens, is between 820 and 830, but it is closer to 830. 617, when we round to nearest tens, is between 610 and 620, but it is closer to 610. So we start subtracting from the ones place. 0 minus 0 is 0. 3 minus, in the tens place, 3 minus 1 is 2. And in the hundreds place, 8 minus 6 is 2. So our estimate is 220, but we know our answer is going to be very close to 220. So 6 minus 7, we can't do that. So we have to borrow from the 2, which is in the tens place. So if we borrow from the 2, we take 1 away from the 2, it becomes a 1, and this 6 becomes a 16. So now 16 minus 7, we get 9. And in the ones place, it's no longer 2 minus 1, it is 1 minus 1. And 1 minus 1 is 0. Now in the hundreds place, it's 8 minus 6. 8 minus 6 equals 2. So our actual answer is 209, but our estimate was 220. Number 6. First we estimate, then we solve. So we have 900 minus 158. So 900 is already rounded. It's already at 100, so we can leave at 100. So let's just leave this at 900 and 158. If we're rounding to, or we're rounding to nearest tens on this one. So 900, if we round it to nearest tens, is still 900. And 158, if we round it to nearest tens, become 160, because it's between 150 and 160, but it's closer to 160. So we subtract 0 minus 0 equals 0. 0 minus 6, we can't do that. So we have to borrow from the hundreds place. We borrow 1 from the 100 place, it becomes an 8, and this 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. And now the hundreds place is no longer 9 minus 1, it's 8 minus 1. 8 minus 1 is 7. So our estimate is 740. So now let's solve the actual problem. So we have 0 minus 8. We can't do 0 minus 8, so we have to borrow from the neighbor. Oh, but the neighbor is 0. So now this neighbor has to borrow from this neighbor. So this neighbor borrows 1 from this neighbor. This neighbor becomes an 8. Now this neighbor can become a 10. Now this neighbor can now borrow from this neighbor. So now this neighbor borrows from this neighbor. This neighbor becomes a 9. And this neighbor becomes a 10. So we have 10 minus 8 equals 2. And this is no longer a 0. It became a 10, and then it became a 9. Now 9 minus 5 becomes 4. And it's no longer 9 minus 1 over here. Now it's 8 minus 1. 8 minus 1 equals 7. So our estimate was 740, and our actual answer was 742. So we had to, since there was two zeros, this 0 could not borrow from this 0 because this 0 didn't have anything to give. So this 0, before it can lend this 0 something, it had to borrow from the hundreds. It borrowed from the hundreds and became a 10. And then this 0 can now borrow from the 10. And this became a 9. And this became a 10. Number 7. We're going to round to the nearest tens. And then we're going to estimate. So we have 607 minus 568. So 607, if we round it to the nearest tens, it'll be between 600 and 610, but it is closer to 610. Now 568, if we're rounding to the nearest tens, it's between 560 and 570, but it is closer to 570. So now 0 minus 0 equals 0. We've subtracted the ones. Now the tens is 1 minus 7. We can't do that, so we have to borrow from this 6. We borrow 1 from this 6. It becomes a 5. And this 1, it becomes an 11. 11 minus 7 equals 4. Now we're in the hundreds place. It's no longer 6 minus 5. It is 5 minus 5. And 5 minus 5 is 0. So we just leave it at 40. So our estimate is 40. So now let's find the actual answer. We have our estimate. Let's see if our estimate is going to be close to the answer. So we start with the ones. 7 minus 8. We can't do that. So this 7 has to borrow from this 0. But this 0 doesn't have anything, so it borrows from this 6. So now this 6 becomes a 5. Now this 0 can become a 10. Now the 7 can borrow from the tens place. It borrows from the tens. The tens becomes a 9. And the ones become a 17. So now that the 1 is a 17, now we can subtract. Now 17 minus 8, and we get 9. And now the tens place, it was a 0, then it turns to a 10, then a 9. So now it is currently a 9. 9 minus 6 equals 3. And in the ones, there's nothing to subtract because it's 5 minus 5, which is 0. So it's 39, but the estimate was 40, so we're really close. Number 8. 973 minus 869. So first, Let's round to the nearest tens. 973 is between 970 and 980, but it is closer to 970. Number 869 is between 860 and 870, but it is closer to 870. So once we start subtracting from the ones place, 0 minus 0 is 0. 7 minus 7 is 0. 9 minus 8 is 1. So our estimate is 100. Now, when we solve the actual problem, let's see if our answer will be close to the estimate. So we have 3 minus 9. We can't do that. So this 3 has to borrow from the tens. It borrows from the tens. This 7 becomes a 6. Now this 3 becomes a 13. 13 minus 9 equals 4. And now the tens place is no longer 7 minus 6. It is 6 minus 6. 6 minus 6 equals 0. And 9 minus 8 equals 1. So our exact answer was 104 and our estimate was 100. So we're close. Now, if we wanted to combine, we could have combined 73 minus 69. So 73 minus 69 would have been 4, and 9 minus 8 is 1. And this is combining the place values. Number 9. Bev scored 540 points. This was 158 points more than Ike scored. How many points did Ike score? So let's find our keywords and important numbers. So Bev scored 540, and this was 158 more than Ike. And we also have a keyword right here. These words, more than, tells us to subtract. So whenever we see more than, we know we're subtracting. So we always underline our question because it tells us what to do. So 540 minus 158. We can't do 0 minus 8, so we have to borrow from the tens place. We take 1 away from the 4, it becomes a 3. Now this 0 can become a 10. Now 10 minus 8 is 2. Now it's no longer 4 minus 5, it is 3 minus 5. But we can't do 3 minus 5, so this 3 has to borrow from the hundreds place. This 5, we take 1 away, it becomes a 4. And now this 3 can become a 13. Now 13 minus this 5 is 8. Now the hundreds place is no longer 5 minus 1, it is 4 minus 1, and 4 minus 1 equals 3. So how many points did Ike score? 382 points. Number 10. A youth group earned $285 washing cars. The group's expenses were $79. How much profit did the group make washing cars? So let's circle our important numbers and keywords. So they earned $285. Expenses mean subtraction. Expenses, that means they spent money, so they subtracted. So that's a keyword that tells us to subtract. So they spent $79. Now the question says, how much profit did the group make washing cars? So let's begin. We know we have two numbers and the word expenses. Let us know to subtract. So we have 285 and we subtract 79. So now 285 minus 79, we can combine these two place values. Because 85 minus 79, that will equal, and now since it's only the hundreds, we just bring it down. So 206. The profit was $206. Number 11. Explain how to use the combined value strategy to find 223 minus 119. So we lined them up, 223 minus 119. Since these numbers are 200, so 23 and 19, we can easily solve 23 and 19. So let's combine those place values. We're combining the tens and the ones. So 23 minus 19 will be 4. And we subtract the hundreds, 2 minus 1, and that would be 1. So how would we use the combined place values to find 23 minus 19? So we would combine the tens and ones. Number 1. A television program lasts for 120 minutes. Of that time, 36 minutes are taken up by commercials. What is the length of the actual program without the commercials? So we know that the program lasted 120 minutes and 36 of those minutes was for commercials. So now our question is asking us, what is the length of the actual program without the commercials? So the whole program was 120 minutes, and we have to find out how long it is without the commercials. So without the commercials, without, so I know we have to subtract, so we take out the commercials minus the 36. So now 0 minus 6, we can't do 0 minus 6. So we have to borrow from the tens place. So now we borrow 1 from the tens place. So this 2 becomes a 1 and this 0 becomes a 10. Now we can do 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now with the tens place, it's no longer 2 minus 3. It is 1 minus 3. And we can't do 1 minus 3. So we have to borrow from the 100. It's a 1. We take it away. It becomes a 0. Now this 1 can become an 11. Now 11 minus 3 becomes 8. So what is the length of the actual program without the commercials? 84 minutes. Sid spent 250 minutes at the library. Of that time, he spent 120 minutes on the computer. How much of his time at the library did Sid not spend on the computer? So 215 minutes. We're going to circle our important numbers and keywords. So 215 minutes was spent at a library, and 120 of those minutes was spent on the computer. So now, how much of his time at the library did Sid not spend on the computer? So let's see. So we have to find out the amount that he did not spend. So we would have to subtract. So 215 minus 120. 5 minus 0 is 5. We're subtracting. 1 minus 2, we can't do that. We can't subtract, take a big number away from a small number. So this number has to borrow. We borrow from the 10. We borrow from the hundreds. Now this 2, we take the 1 away from it. It becomes a 1. And now this 1 can become an 11. 11 minus 2 is 9. And this is no longer 2 minus 1. It is 1 minus 1. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So 95 So 95 minutes was not spent on the computer. Number 3. Xavier's older brother has 568 songs on his music player. To the nearest hundred, about how many songs are on the music player? So it was 568 songs, and we know we have to round to the nearest hundred. So 568 is between 500 and 600, but it is closer to 600. Number 4. The students traveled to the zoo in 3 buses. One bus had 47 students, the second bus had 38 students, the third bus had 43 students. How many total students were on the 3 buses? So let's circle our important numbers and keywords. So there were 3 total buses. The first one had 47 students, the second one had 38, and the third one had 43. So how many total students were on the 3 buses? So the total tells us to add. So let's add these 3 numbers. We're going to add 47 plus 38 plus 43. We add these numbers up. So we can add this 3 and this 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. So we do these 2 first because they're easier. 7 plus 3 is 10. And 10 plus 8 is 18. So 18, we carry our 1 over to the tens. Now 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. So 128 students. Number 5. Callie has 83 postcards in her collection. Of the postcards, 24 are from Canada. The rest of the postcards are from the United States. How many of the postcards are from the United States? So let's see, she had 83 postcards and 24 were from Canada. So that means the rest was from the United States. And we always underline our question because it tells us what to do. So to find the amount that were from the United States, we would have to subtract the ones that were from Canada, the 24 that was from Canada, away from the total of 83. So that would mean 83 minus 24. So 83 minus 24, we cannot do 3 minus 4. So this 3 has to borrow from the tens. It borrows 1 from the tens. This becomes a 7. And this 3 becomes a 13. Now we have 13 minus 4. We can do that. 13 minus 4 is 9. And the tens place is no longer 8 minus 2, it is 7 minus 2. And 7 minus 2 is 5. So 59 were from the United States. Number 6. There were 475 seats set up for the school play. At one performance, 189 of the seats were empty. How many seats were filled at that performance? So our important numbers, 475 of the seats for the school play, and 189 of the seats were empty. So we have to find the seats that were filled. So how many seats were filled at that performance? So we had a total of 475, and 189 were empty. So let's subtract 189 from 475 to find the amount of seats that were filled. So 5 minus 9, we can't do 5 minus 9. So this 5 has to borrow from the tens place. This 7 becomes a 6. And this 5 becomes a 15. Now 15 minus 9 equals 6. So we're on to the tens place. It's no longer 7 minus 8. It's 6 minus 8. And we can't do 6 minus 8. So we have to borrow from the hundreds place. This 4 becomes a 3. And this 6 becomes a 16. Now 16 minus 8 equals 8. And in the hundreds place, it's no longer 4 minus 1, it's 3 minus 1. And 3 minus 1 equals 2. So how many seats were filled? 286 seats